Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brabber, and alongside me is Logan Camden. And some of you guys are probably seeing us for the second time today because it's been a wild day in the NFL. We had the Myles Garrett trade that we reacted to, and then a couple minutes after that episode went up, AJ Brown went and got traded. So we'll very briefly talk about that at the end of the show, but you know why we're all here today. We are previewing the NBA Finals. And Logan, before we get into all the X's and O's, I just want to start by setting the scene here. When was the last time that a finals matchup felt this big to you going into the series? We have Wemby versus the Knicks. The ratings fans are going to be fucking euphoric, all the ratings watchers, because this series is going to do numbers.
You know, I can't say I'm more excited than normal for the finals. I'm always really juiced and geeked for any finals matchup, but it does feel like we're on the precipice of something very special, whether it be the Knicks and this elite team and all this depth and continuity and the Knicks potentially being back on top, or this could just be the crowning moment for Victor Wembanyama a lot sooner than we may have expected as the best player on the planet. And him in his first playoff run, just tearing through the entire league. So, I mean, either way this series goes, we're on the verge of something very special, and I'm really excited. I mean, these are two super passionate fan bases, and for the Knicks, obviously, they're a lot more starved than a team like the Spurs, but it's been a while since the Spurs have been back here, and you know, as I'm sure everybody knows, this is a rematch of the 1999 NBA Finals, which is always super interesting when we've got a battle between two similar teams. So I'm super excited for this one, and I cannot wait for Wednesday, man. It's going to be an awesome game one.
Bro was just as juiced for 2023 Nuggets Heat as he is.
That might be the lone. I was thinking about last year with SGA and Hallie, and I was fired up about that too.
I was fired up for last year too. Like, I would say I individually had similar levels of excitement. However, the discourse could not be more different. Everybody was bitching and moaning going into last year's finals. And this one, I do feel like pretty much everybody is thrilled about. And I do think we're in for a pretty epic series here. I think the basketball is going to be awesome. I also think the vibes and the stakes are just guaranteed to be incredible. We have one of the biggest, most iconic NBA fan bases that is starving. Like you said, they haven't seen a title in 53 years, Logan. They haven't seen a final series in 27 years, going up against a 22-year-old Wemby who is trying to do something we've never seen before in terms of, in his first playoff run, being the best player in the world and leading to a championship that young. And he's looking to pretty much just break NBA history and shatter every precedent that came before him and like open up some wild conversations. And you have this great organization that is the Spurs trying to pull off one of the great quick turnarounds that we've seen in NBA history. I mean, thinking about where they were when they drafted Wemby, but even last year to now be a 62-win team that is the favorite going into the finals, and they're looking to become the second youngest champ in NBA history. They're trying to youth mog already the Thunder, Logan. They were the second youngest last year, and now the Spurs are looking to become an even younger champ than them. And the Knicks are trying to get their title in before the Spurs potentially kick off a dynasty, because if they win it this year, we know that they're going to probably win a number more because they're just going to keep getting better. And both these teams are just in incredible form in these playoffs. I mean, the Spurs just knocked off the 64-win reigning champ Thunder. The Knicks won their last 11 games in the Eastern Conference playoffs. We've got the best playoff offense versus the best playoff defense. We've got two teams that are fully healthy, which is just great to see because we haven't gotten that in a lot of playoff series or even finals matchups in recent years. Like, I just don't know how you beat this, man. I am very excited for this series, and I am also hopeful that all of the energy around this matchup, all the positive energy, is going to continue to be channeled in a more positive direction in terms of the discourse than what we saw in the Western Conference Finals, where there was definitely lots of eyeballs on the series, but there was also a lot of nastiness. I think generally people really like the Knicks. They like the story. I think people really like Wemby. And so on top of the fact that I think it's going to be a great basketball matchup, I do think like this is a series that is good for the NBA. And again, I'm not focused on ratings and stuff. I just think this really, really feels big. I think we're going to feel that for the entirety of whatever this is, if it's 6, if it's 7 games, and that's going to be great to see. So, with that being laid out there, Logan, let's get into the basketball matchup here. And the first thing that stands out to me is that we are looking at the number one playoff offense that New York has had versus the number one playoff defense that the Spurs have had. How do you think the Knicks offense can fare against that Spurs defense that just gave major trouble to OKC and has given major trouble to everybody they faced up to this point?
I think they match up pretty well, actually, and it starts with Jalen Brunson. I think the guy that I have the most confidence in offensively coming into this series is a guy like Jalen Brunson, where I've said these stats a lot on this show, but since Brunson joined the Knicks in 2023, the Knicks have a playoff offensive rating of 119.4 with him on the court. And off the court, they have an offensive rating of 108.3. During that same time span, Brunson is delivering you 29, 4, and 7 on 46, 34, 84 splits, 57.3% true shooting. And so while the efficiency may dip in certain matchups, Brunson is always a guy that you think can deliver and give you efficiency. Obviously, the dynamics change in this series because there's going to be a Wemby in the paint. But individually on Brunson, I kind of like him in this matchup. And it's not a dig at like Steph Castle or anything like that. I think the Spurs have bodies to throw at him. It's just more of my confidence in him and how methodical Brunson is. Like, I just trust him to get to his spots, to get to good looks. I will say, I think his three-point shooting is going to be vitally, vitally important in this matchup because of the potential struggles inside the arc. Again, I think Brunson can get to these looks. They're going to be hard because Wemby's going to be parked down there. Castle can at least contest him and play physically and make life hard on him offensively. And in the regular season against the Spurs head-to-head, Brunson gave you 27, 4, and 8, but he shot 43% from the field and 47% from behind the arc. I think a lot of his offense could come and go with how efficient he is from behind the arc if he's really getting disrupted inside there. But even though that being said, Brunson is still the guy that I have the most confidence in offensively of any player coming into this matchup because of how consistently he has delivered on the biggest stages. Like, I just can't doubt the guy. He has given me 4 playoffs worth of really high-level play across all matchups, and he fared pretty well in this matchup in the regular season. So, it starts with Brunson, and I do think this is going to be a difficult matchup for him. That being said, I still have the most confidence of him out of any player in this series.
Yeah, I definitely think that Brunson is the most reliably elite offensive player in this series, but I think it's about a lot more than that in terms of why this Knicks offense is such a good matchup to actually beat the Spurs defense in a way that nobody else has been able to. Like, you mentioned the offensive on-off stuff with Brunson over the years in the playoffs. What's important to really hammer home is this year when he's off, they have a 120 offensive rating. Now they've got like a 127 offensive rating when he's on, but pretty much any offensive lineup the Knicks have put out there, as long as either Brunson or Cat is on the floor, has been killer. And they are just operating at a level offensively that is better than anybody else in the NBA. Now, Wemby has made the Spurs an all-time level defense this year, and especially in these playoffs. They have a 102 defensive rating with him on the court. That is 10.5 points better than league average. With Wemby out there, they've been playing like one of the great defenses in modern NBA history. But I do think the Knicks offense is the best built in the NBA to actually give Wemby trouble. And there's a number of reasons for that. The biggest one to me is not actually Brunson. It's the fact that they have an elite three-point shooting center in Karl-Anthony Towns, and they have some killer 5 outlooks to drag Wemby out of the paint. They also have elite movement and cutting principles, which give them a really unique ability to move Wemby around defensively, which is so important because that makes it harder for him to roam, and that makes it really hard to load up on Brunson like the Spurs could versus Shea. That's a really important different dynamic here. The Thunder offense was so predicated upon Shea ISO, Shea pick and roll, and like there wasn't much movement around him, and there weren't many threats around him. So the Spurs were able to really key in on one player in a way that they just can't do against the Knicks. And when you have cutters, right, those are players who can occupy Wemby and they can free up another cut. They can free up an opportunity for an open teammate elsewhere. Like, I just think the level of movement that their offense brings to the table is really valuable. And the fact that everybody on the floor is a threat on every possession. And even if you do have Josh Hart out there and the Spurs try putting Wemby on him to roam off of him, which is something that I do think they'll attempt at some point, and let's say Hart goes cold and that does cause some problems for the Knicks offense, then they can just go to Shamet, they can go to Deuce McBride, they can go to these guys who are elite three-point shooters, get an elite shooter in that spot, and now you're back to these awesome 5-out looks. And also, if they try to roam off of Hart with Wemby, there's the possibility that Cat just totally bullies them and punishes them for putting anybody other than Wemby on him, because they don't have a big power forward in terms of a body to put on Cat. In their starting lineup, the wings are Champagny and Vassell. They can go to Keldon Johnson off the bench, who is thick but is shorter. So there's a number of dynamics where the Knicks really challenge the Spurs defense in a way that nobody else has been able to. They also have a two-man game with Brunson and Cat that is just built to fry drop coverage, which is what Wemby wants to play. His rim deterrence is his GOAT level superpower, but Brunson is such an elite intermediate shot maker. Cat is so effective in the pick and pop game that they can beat that look really effectively. And the Knicks shot making as a team has just been insane in these playoffs. Like, they're averaging 1.11 points per jump shot. It's been ridiculous. They have been the best jump shooting team in the playoffs, and they're getting a high shot quality, but also they just have a lot of dudes who are shooting the ball at a really high level. So when everybody on the floor is a threat and everybody is pretty much involved on a possession to possession basis in a way that is very different from OKC and different from most offenses around the NBA, and they just have so many different ways that they can attack, and they are specifically elite at scoring outside the paint and away from the rim. Like, they have a unique ability to diminish Wemby's monstrous impact from being as destructive as it usually is. Like, he is Wemby. He's the most game-changing defensive player we've seen in a long, long time. But if I were drafting teams for him to face, like, the Knicks would be his last pick, I would imagine, because of the unique things that they can do. And they hovered around a 120 offensive rating over their 3 meetings this season against the Spurs, and they beat them twice because their offense was able to produce against San Antonio in a way that nobody else really can. And in the playoffs, they've just been a machine, man. I mean, the Knicks are a plus 12 relative offense this postseason. Like, we are talking about a team that is operating currently at an all-time level in the playoffs. So they really might be the only team in the NBA that is actually decently comfortable against this Spurs defense. And for that reason, I think they are probably very happy that they got the Spurs and not the Thunder. We've talked about this, but I just think the dynamics of this matchup on both sides of the ball, but especially for the Knicks offense, are much more favorable than they would be against OKC, because Wemby's great ability is he takes away the rim, but he is going to be forced to get out and guard in space in the series more than he would like to, just because if he doesn't, like, the Knicks are going to make him pay with their jump shooting all over the floor.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on a lot of stuff there. The Knicks are number one in field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, assists per game, and they're number one in defensive rating in these playoffs. They have been executing at such a high level. I just wanted to start with Brunson just because I think that Brunson has got to deliver and be the guy in these clutch moments in these tight games to get him across the finish line. Cat is the next guy I look to that could break the Knicks, though, and I think you bring up a lot of good reasons why. First of all, if they're not guarding him with Wemby, I completely agree. I think there's a roster imbalance where you see the Spurs don't have a ton of other guys to turn to size-wise, where I think Cat's going to be a mismatch if they choose to have Wemby as that roamer on Josh Hart. And I think Cat can just bully those mismatches. What that's going to do is the Spurs are just going to have to hope Hart misses threes, because with Wemby roaming off, those backdoor cuts that are normally available to the Knicks aren't going to be available, and Hart's going to have to make them pay. But if they make the adjustment where Wemby is on Cat because Cat is frying their mismatches, then those backdoor opportunities and everything the Knicks do off ball is going to be a real problem. So I think Cat is the guy that could break this matchup open for them because of just what a skilled big man he is. But I do look at the Knicks having advantages on the wings too. Bridges and Anunoby have been absolutely excellent in these playoffs. Anunoby is at 20 points on 48% from deep, 72% true shooting. Bridges is at 15 points per game on 66.5% true shooting. And specifically when you're looking at the guys that are going to be matched up on them, like Champagny, Vassell, like Harper and Fox maybe in spots. They're just, I trust them to be able to shoot over the top and get to their spots. But the bigger thing is, like you were saying, even if they're not hitting jump shots, it's the motion. And that's where I think it's a different challenge where OKC's offense doesn't have, like you mentioned, doesn't have as many guys that can kill you individually. They're not as skilled offensively across the board. They also don't have the off-ball movement and principles, like you're saying, that the Knicks do. And that's where there's going to be extra stress, where if Wemby can't be parked in the paint the whole time, just taking away the rim like he normally can, there's going to be extra stress for the Spurs to be aware and disciplined, and really defend as a team. And it's not like I don't think the Spurs can do it. It's just a different beast with the Knicks. The Spurs are one of the most connective teams in basketball, but just the nuance of the Knicks' actions that they run, if there's pin downs and backdoor cuts out of the corner, if they're just curling actions with Brunson, they're just such a good, deliberate offense, and they're schemed well. And it's a lot for a young basketball team like the Spurs to have to step up and be prepared for everything that the Knicks offense can do, especially when, like you're saying, there's not really anybody that you feel really comfortable helping off of or exploiting in this matchup. I think that's something for the Spurs offense to figure out, vice versa. But I agree with you. I think this Knicks offense just presents a lot of challenges across the board. And as you mentioned too, if Hart's clanging, the Knicks have a lot of guys that you trust to come off the bench.
Right.
If it's a Deuce, if it's a Clarkson, if it's a Shamet, to give them good minutes and to punish them for helping off. So, yeah, I think the Knicks offense is just the best one that the Spurs are going to have faced in these playoffs. Again, I think the assist per game number is huge, man. They generate a really high shot quality. They have elite ball movement, and they have elite principles. The Knicks offense, I just think, is the best in the playoff field.
It is. But again, it's also particularly a challenging matchup for Wemby. And I do think that's why Cat is the biggest key. I mean, the 3-point shooting dynamic with him. And I do just want to give credit to the level he's been at in these playoffs. I mean, he's on pace to become the first player ever to average 16, 10, and 5 on 70% true shooting in a postseason. Like, the playmaking, the scoring efficiency, and the shooting has been phenomenal. I mean, 49% from deep in these playoffs. His 3-point volume is going to have to go up in this matchup, though. Like, he's got to let it fly. And I'm talking about spotting up. I'm talking about off the pop. I'm talking about in transition. Whenever he has space, and this applies to whoever Wemby is matched up with, but especially Cat, who's going to be in that matchup a lot. You have to knock down those shots to try to keep him honest. And the reality is, Wemby does not want to come out into space, not because he isn't comfortable there, although that is partially true, more so because the second that he is outside of the paint, it opens up for the entire team. And every team's objective is, how can we get Wemby out into space so we can actually attack and score in the paint? And I think the Knicks have the ability to do that more so than anybody else. And Cat specifically, if he comes into a game and he knocks down 3 threes in the first 6 minutes, that is going to leave Wemby and the Spurs immediately sort of scrambling and figuring out, okay, how do we figure this out? And then I also do think Cat's driving and mismatch attacking are going to be key in this series, because at some point they are going to try Wemby on Hart outright to have him roam. And there are definitely going to be long stretches in this series where they just pre-switch to keep Wemby on the baseline, regardless of the matchup, because that's what they always want to do. So corner 3-point shooting is going to be really important, specifically for the Knicks. But because, as we said, the Spurs don't really have that big, thick power forward type to put on Cat, he's going to have an advantage if they guard him with anybody other than Wemby. And there's pressure on Cat to force the Spurs out of that look with Wemby as a roamer by really winning his matchup one-on-one. But also, as we said, you can just go with Deuce or Shamet over Hart, and that means that you have to put Wemby on Cat at that point. I don't really see another option against those lineups, and that's just not ideal for Wemby and his defensive impact. So Cat is the X factor, I think, in two different ways, both in terms of the jump shooting and the mismatch attacking when they put anybody other than Wemby on him. Brunson, though, is obviously another key player just because he's the best offensive player for the Knicks, and I think the best offensive player in this series. And he's probably quite pleased that he's not dealing with OKC because even though this is an elite Spurs defense, like they do not have the hellish options to throw at him that OKC does, where he'd be dealing with Cason Wallace and Caruso and Lou Dort. Like the Spurs are a very good point of attack defense. It's different with OKC. And I don't think Castle is quite as elite in this matchup as he is versus Shea. Brunson being so small and shifty, but also being thicker and a little better built to play through physicality and contact than Shea. And also the fact that he just has more different ways that he gets involved because of how this Knicks offense operates. Like we saw the Thunder doing what they could to get Shea going more off ball, but like it's totally different with the Knicks. They use Brunson as an off ball screener all the time. And like they are just constantly getting him touches in different ways, which is just harder to guard with one player in terms of that individual matchup. And then also, he just has way better offensive personnel around him than Shea did, which means he's going to get more clean chances to score. I think it's more likely that you do force a defensive miscommunication and you just get him free for a good look off the catch. And then the 3-point shooting, as you mentioned, is really important in this series because even though I don't think we're going to see the Spurs load up on Brunson in the same way they did on Shea, like it's just hard to score in the paint against the Spurs because Victor Wembanyama exists. And that's where if you can get up 7-8 threes a game and make 40% of them, that's a phenomenal option. Interestingly, Brunson has never like shot the three that well in the playoffs, but his intermediate scoring has been his superpower. The fact that he's 50% on intermediate twos, and that is such consistently elite offense. But I'm with you in terms of the importance of the 3-point shot for him. And I'm with you that I think like we should expect Brunson to play well in this series, and we should expect him to have big moments. Castle is a hell of a defender, and like I want to be clear, it's not going to be easy for Brunson in this series. He's going up against an amazing defense, but his shot making is a superpower, and I think he will have better opportunities to score against this defense, and meaningfully so, than Shea did last series.
And I don't want to beat a dead horse with the shooting point, but I think that's going to be vitally important in this series in general as well.
Absolutely.
The Knicks are the number one 3-point shooting team in these playoffs, and their opponents have the worst 3-point shooting in these playoffs. You expect that in general to balance out, but there is it's such a push-pull thing with San Antonio. It's like Wemby generates such a high shot quality for everyone around him, but you trust they're shooting less than the Knicks. And the Knicks, you expect to still generate a pretty high shot quality, and you trust their shooters more. But in general, you expect those things to balance out a little bit more. But in this matchup specifically, I just think that's going to be super, super important in general, as well as the possession battle, which I was kind of shocked and surprised by some of these numbers after the 3 games. The Knicks convincingly won that battle across the board in the regular season. They won the turnover battle by 6. They won the points off turnover battle by 1. They won the fast break points battle by 24, which was staggering. They won the offensive rebounding battle by 12. And they won the overall field goal attempt battle by 33. And so I think those are going to be very, very important for both of these teams. Who can squeeze out extra possessions and who can just across the board shoot better. Again, those are kind of cliche broad points you could point to for any matchup, but I think those are going to be very, very important in this series.
Absolutely. And I agree that the possession battle favors the Knicks. Like it's something that they're really elite at. They are number 1 in rebound percentage in these playoffs, dominant rebounding team. The Spurs are 3rd, very good, but the Knicks are a better offensive rebounding team than the Spurs are. And the Knicks have been really good in the turnover battle. They're plus 1.8 per game in terms of turnover margin in the playoffs. The Spurs are minus 1.4. So the Knicks are turning it over a bit more than they used to, but I think you live with that because a lot of that is due to Cat having more of a playmaking responsibility and this just being more of like a free-flowing offense as opposed to Brunson kind of walking the ball down every time. And he protected the ball extremely well, but what this level of movement and getting everybody involved for New York has unlocked is a huge net positive overall. And they're still winning the turnover margin more consistently than the Spurs are. Those Spurs numbers aren't exactly like existing in a vacuum because they just went up against the Thunder, who are the goats of the turnover margin, and they actually held their own as that series went along in that category. But I still do think possession battle is slight but clear advantage to the Knicks, at least going into the series. And then the shot making, like you said, it's just massive. The shot making around the stars is a huge key. Mikal and OG have been so reliable, and a lot of that is just because of the jump shooting. The cutting is also good, but the jump shooting has been phenomenal, and especially OG. I mean, he is at a sizzling 1.4 points per jumper in these playoffs. Like, it's stupid. And like I said, the Knicks as a team have been ridiculous on jumpers. So can they keep that going is a big question, because that is the biggest key versus the Spurs defense, being able to beat them with jump shooting. Most guys have no idea that the shampoo and body wash they've been using for years contain ingredients that can disrupt hormones. I didn't either until I looked it up. And then I switched to Base Shower Duo, and the difference was immediate. It really is the best. The shampoo has peppermint and argan oil, so your scalp actually feels clean, your hair is thicker and healthier, and there's no sulfates, there's no hormone disrupting chemicals, which is stuff I was putting on my head every single day without thinking twice for years. But it has been a major upgrade for me and the easiest change I could have made.
And with Based, you can feel good knowing that you're using health, plant-based ingredients. No sulfates, no parabens, no endocrine-disrupting chemicals, formulated for men who care about what goes on in their body and not just in it. The result is confidence, not just by looking good, but knowing what you're using is actually good for you.
If you've been using the same products forever without thinking twice about what's in them, it's worth a look. Based Body Works is clean, plant-based men's grooming that actually performs. Use code NERDSESH for 20% off at basebodyworks.com and get a free toiletry bag when you buy a set, because confidence shouldn't come at the cost of your health. But it'll be interesting to see how hot they can stay. And honestly, I'm just very interested in this matchup. It's going to be interesting to see how much Wemby can affect this offense compared to what he does to everybody else, because I do really like the Knicks offense in this matchup, but then also it is Wemby, and maybe this looks different than I'm envisioning it. So we shall see. But then, of course, Logan, there's Wemby on the other side of the ball. And I think let's start there with the Spurs offense. What the hell can the Knicks do with Wemby?
I actually think the Knicks can do a lot with Wemby, and I'm more so looking at how does Wemby get his consistent offense uh, against New York. It's interesting. Like, that's probably one of my biggest question marks about the Spurs in this series is, can Wemby deliver enough offensively throughout this series just to meet what they need, right? It starts with Cat and Mitchell Robinson. Like, I just think those guys are such good physical matchups to a guy like Wemby that getting into the paint is just going to be a little bit more difficult for Wemby in this series than most matchups. And that's where I'm looking at the Spurs trying to maybe get some off-ball actions to force switches. I think Wemby's jump shooting is going to be vitally, vitally important in this series, just because I think that he's going to get less around the rim. Like, I think Mitch is a good physical counter, and this is specifically on Wemby drives, right? If Wemby catches the ball on the block, I think he can get that look. Those are going to be tough finishes, but really him driving, I just think he's going to struggle to drive one-on-one against these guys and manufacture really easy looks against them. And throughout this series, I think one of the big questions of that matchup is how does he deal with the physicality, specifically against Mitchell Robinson? Like, I just think this is going to be a brutally physical series for Wemby throughout, and I just want to see how he battles through that, how he holds up throughout this series, just because of how thick and strong Cat and Mitch both are in this matchup. But in general, I'm looking at how the Spurs offense can exploit the Knicks' weak points, because I still think there are a few. I don't know exactly how they do it, but there are still weak points to go at, right? That was my skepticism of the Knicks' title chances throughout these playoffs in the regular season. And it's still what I'm looking for the Spurs to do to win this battle offensively, right? Jalen Brunson is egregiously small, and they're going to have to hide him, and they're going to have to find ways to make sure that he isn't getting attacked relentlessly. And on the Spurs, I'm looking at them to just go at him and attack him regardless of the matchups, right? Cat is going to get a ton of burn in this series as well. And I want to see how often they can get a switch, maybe Cat out to the perimeter and get him defending in space. How often can they involve him in actions and potentially get him to overplay his hand the way we know Cat can, right? He can get a little brainless defensively sometimes. And then Mitchell Robinson, this is more of a key like for them offensively, but it's like just exploiting their weak points, right? Are they going to foul and do hack-a-Mitch and see if they can just play Mitchell Robinson off the floor and maybe get Wemby some easy looks because Mitch isn't even a viable look in this matchup? Can they get
Yeah.
him defending in space more often? So it's Wemby's jump shooting to me. I think he's going to have to be really on as a jump shooter. The Spurs are going to have to find and run sets and actions that get Wemby more attempts around the rim, because I think individually he's going to struggle to create those looks out of isolation, and then really attacking and deliberately going at the Knicks' weak points, which I also just have to give a ton of credit to Mike Brown. Mike has done a phenomenal job of scheming around those weak points and making sure teams haven't been able to easily attack those guys in isolation. But those are the keys for the Spurs offense. I'm not skeptical that they can make it happen. I'm just, I guess, intrigued as to how they're going to attack these weak points and try to get the most out of their offense.
Interesting. I think Wemby is going to dominate offensively
Really?
in this series. Yeah. I think this is going to be his least dominant defensive series. And I keep wanting to phrase it that way because I know I'm talking about all the things the Knicks can do that pose unique challenges for him. He's still Wemby defensively. But I think it's going to be his most dominant offensive series. I think it's going to be the first offensive series in which we really see him like take over on a game-to-game basis.
Is it
And
the
there's a couple reasons for that.
okay?
I think he's a really bad matchup for Cat in every way. I think he is going to get significantly more offense off the roll in this matchup than he did against OKC. iHeart did such a good job challenging Wemby in that way, but also like the OKC swarm is just different. I think that the Knicks do not have that same sort of size and athleticism to contend with him off the roll. And Cat is just still a bad pick and roll defender. And he's going to play a deep drop to do everything he can to take away Wemby lobs. But I think they can still get a couple lobs over top of Cat. And then that does put pressure on Fox and Castle and Harper to make the short jumpers out of pick and roll that any defense will concede against them. But those looks are easier against Cat, who is just not a good drop defender. You actually touched on another reason that I think Wemby is going to have a really big offensive series, though. Like the Spurs were great at getting Wemby in a position where he could attack the Knicks' defensive weak points this regular season. They ran a ton of off-ball screens for him, like an insane amount of off-ball screens where Champagnie, who they're mostly trying to hide Brunson on, would screen for him, and then he could just go right at Brunson off the catch. And like they were just repeatedly getting him in that position where he's catching it around the elbow in one step. He's basically either getting to the rim or he can just comfortably shoot over top. And so that's something that the Knicks are going to have to try to figure out. And there were a couple moments where they like very quickly last second pre-switched it and OG would come up and get involved in the action. They're going to have to find a way to keep Brunson from getting attacked as much as he was this regular season. I do think they'll also try OG on Wemby at some points just because he's such a unique defensive player and he can make life hard on him in terms of just pushing his catch point farther out of the post and whatnot, being super physical with him. But then there's obviously just the size difference where if Wemby can get anywhere around the basket, what he can do as a dunker spot target, what he can do on the offensive glass, like he can really just dominate OG in that way. So I just don't see an answer for him in this starting five because there's certainly no individual player, but I don't think they can defend Wemby on a team level as well as a team like the Thunder can, like not even close. And that's where I do think Mitchell Robinson feels very important in this matchup because he is the best counter in terms of he can get out and guard in space and he can stick with Wemby more effectively because that's the other thing, right? I mean, he can pull Cat out into space and he can absolutely barbecue as a jump shooter. I also think he can have some success driving against Cat. Mitch makes that harder. Mitch is also a much better drop defender. He's a much better rim protector. Like Mitch is just a much better defender than Cat in every way, much more disciplined. I mean, Cat is probably going to have some dumb fouls in this series and Wemby, pretty crafty foul drawer. Pretty freaking crafty in that way. So that's another concern for Cat. But Mitch is just so massive, man, and he's so strong. And if you think about what iHeart did against Wemby, like Mitch can replicate some of that individually, but maybe be even a bit more of a physical challenge. And also, like he dominated Wemby on the offensive glass in that NBA Cup final. So Wemby definitely has to be up to the task of dealing with Mitch as a physical presence. But the thing with Mitch is I just really worry about him being remotely viable on offense in this series because he hurts the spacing so much. And it's like, yes, he's a good vertical spacer. Yes, he's a great offensive rebounder, but Wemby can cover space in terms of playing two out of pick and roll like nobody else. And Wemby can gobble up defensive rebounds in a ridiculous way. And overall, the fact that you are now putting a guy who can only score in the restricted area on the floor, like that just means Wemby is going to be able to loom much larger in the paint and be more destructive there defensively. And then there's the simple fact that Mitch is 30% from the free throw line. And I do think whenever you get close to a bonus situation, like the Spurs are going to foul him and they're going to try to get him off the court because that has worked for everybody so far. Like it has been an extremely effective strategy. So if they can limit Mitch's minutes in this series, which I think they can do because of the concerns I have about Mitch's offense, then I think that Wemby is going to be feasting. And he did dominate in his minutes in the regular season. Like he was on a minutes restriction, I think, for all three of these games. But per 36 minutes against the Knicks this year, he averaged 32 points and 14 rebounds on 70% true shooting. So I kind of think we're going to see a different level of scoring volume unlocked from Wemby in this matchup and a different level of dominant imposition on the inside. And if the shot is going with that, then that's when it gets really terrifying. But I do think, like you said, like there are holes in this Knicks defense, and I think the Spurs are going to have ways to exploit those holes.
How do you feel about the other guys around Wemby in this matchup? Because I don't really think it's an easy and intuitive kind of series for them. You know, I think the wings for the Knicks really match up well with guys like Champagny and Vassell. They're versatile, they're switchable. Like you're kind of moving me, admittedly, like with what you're saying about Wemby's offense. Like, I do see a world. I think Mitch is vitally important in this matchup. I think there is a world in which he gets played off the floor due to the foul stuff. If they get
Mhm.
him off the floor, that does make a big difference to me because outside of him and Cat, there aren't a lot of guys that can really match up with Wemby. And we talk about the problem that Cat's going to pose for this team. In that scenario, there's not an answer for Wemby. Like, do you trust those guys to get their offense outside of Wemby? Because I think that's just as important in this series.
Yeah, well, outside of Wemby, like you have to consider the roll gravity that Wemby does have
For
and how that
sure,
makes
for
life easier
sure.
for these guys out of pick and roll, and how, okay, if you swarm, then there's going to be the skip passes that open up to the shooters. And that's where Castle's been so great making those passes throughout these playoffs. I do think in terms of Mikal and OG and to some extent Josh Hart, like the Knicks perimeter defense is pretty well built to deal with the Spurs guards, especially I think Mikal on De'Aaron Fox. Like that's a tough matchup for Fox because
Mhm.
Mikal has been really good defensively in terms of his one-on-one perimeter defense. And Fox has just been struggling, and he wasn't great in this matchup in the regular season. And in the playoffs, he's at 16, 4, and 6 on under 52% true shooting. And he's just been living off of pull up jumpers that are not super consistent for him. So they probably need Fox to be better in this series than he's been. But I actually really like the other two guards for the Spurs more in terms of this matchup. They've been more consistent all playoffs, but also I love the athleticism and the paint scoring and the size dynamic where they don't live with the volatility of the pull up jumpers like Fox. They get 2 feet in the paint and they are super aggressive and just really tough to stay in front of and tough to keep away from the rim. And I don't know if anyone other than OG can guard Castle on this Knicks team. I'm going to be real. I think he's just too big and too strong for both Hart and Mikal. I think it takes a very unique kind of player to guard Castle, and maybe Hart can bother his handle and force some turnovers. I don't know. That's the one vulnerability that he has, but I kind of think Castle can play bully ball against these guys. And honestly, let me know if this is a flag for excessive glaze. I don't know if anybody on the Knicks team can guard Dylan Harper. Like, I think Dylan Harper is game changing in this series once again. We saw what he did in the first 2 rounds. We saw what he did in the last couple of games against OKC. I think his ability to consistently get deep into the paint and then finish remarkably well in traffic translates to this series as well as any other. And then I do think they can go at Cat, and none of these guys are like elite drop coverage beaters necessarily. But again, if you're getting really open 10 footers, like that's still good offense. And whenever they have a chance, they will cook Jalen Brunson. And that's the guy who I'm much more concerned about, honestly, even than Cat is Brunson defensively. And it's not so much that like they're going to directly attack him every time down. It's more so, I just think his uselessness defensively is a real problem in this series. And what I mean by that is, I think they're going to mostly just try to hide him on Champagny and probably Vassell some. They obviously don't want him guarding the guards. They want him on a wing shooter who's mostly going to be in the corner, who's not going to do a lot off the dribble. But that means that Brunson is going to be the low man a lot. And that's a problem when you have these three guards who consistently get into the paint a lot and draw help. And it's really a problem when you have Wemby off the roll. Like Brunson is just useless as a helper. He's completely useless. And if he helps off of those guys, okay, they're getting wide open shots. But like even if he gets a contest on a Vassell or a Champagny, he doesn't do anything. He's too small. And those guys who are elite 3-point shooters from the corners are going to be super comfortable. So that's where I just think like every possession, Brunson is going to be weakening this Knicks defense. And I do think the Spurs can take advantage of that. And sometimes it is going to be, all right, we have a cross match, or we're able to get the switch where like Harper and Castle can go directly at him and he is just food. Those guys are way too big and way too athletic. But there are a number of ways in which I'm worried about Brunson and his just major size limitations. Like also, you can run stuff for Champagny if they're going to try to hide him on him. Like he is a lethal shooter off handoffs. And again, they used him as a screener a bunch to get Wemby going downhill with a head of steam with only Jalen Brunson standing in front of him. So I know that I've said a lot this entire year. I'm really worried about Brunson's defense, and nobody has really been able to exploit it to the max in the playoffs so far. I think the Spurs have an ability to do that. And I also think the Spurs are just the best offense that the Knicks have seen so far. So I am worried about that. And that's where, even though I'm not the biggest believer in De'Aaron Fox, I think the totality of this guard trio with their athleticism and with the couple of holes that there are in this Knicks defense, I think they'll be able to be pretty productive.
I don't know. I mean, Fox has been so bad recently. He was so bad in the Western Conference Finals overall that, like, I can't really say that I have a ton of confidence in him. And then it's like, I don't know what you were saying about Brunson. It's like nobody's been able to exploit it thus far, and the Knicks have found clever ways to hide Brunson. Like, don't get me wrong.
But
I
how
think
do
that's
you hide Brunson in this matchup? You put him on a lethal catch and shooter, and
I
he's
mean, I
useless
would
as a
just
helper?
I would play them straight up. I would put Bridges on one of the wings. I would put OG on I would just put Brunson on Fox and let him live in that matchup. Yeah.
Whoa. Whoa. He's getting fried, bro. You cannot put Brunson. You saw what CJ McCollum did to him, bro. CJ McCollum was getting a great shot every
I just
single possession
don't
attacking Brunson.
I mean, I would start with that, but I think Brown has buttons he can push if he's switching to a zone or something like that. Like, I think that I don't know, like, I trust Mike Brown to find clever ways to do it enough. Like, I agree, like,
But
it's
you
a
understand what
concern
I'm
with
saying? Like, it's not, oh my God, they're going to fry Brunson one-on-one every time. It's Brunson is a useless defensive player. And the
and he's
Spurs
been
have
a
a lot of ways that they can exploit his uselessness.
and I don't know, we've been saying that all year long, and it hasn't come back to bite the Knicks yet.
Okay, we can agree to disagree. I mean, watching back through all three of these games, I think they did do a really good job of
Brunson
exploiting
is
Brunson, and I
probably the
don't think there's
worst
a good spot
defender
to
in
hide him.
basketball.
Well, he's on the short list. Yeah. I don't know, man. They've got a lot of size. They've got a lot of athleticism. They've got guards who attack downhill. They've got a Wemby who is the greatest role threat we've ever seen, and they've got elite shooters in the corners. I just think they're a very well-built offense, and I don't see anywhere to hide Brunson where I'm like, oh, yeah, that's fine, right? There's no Dyson Daniels to stick him on where you can just keep him out of things. That doesn't exist here. There's no Dean Wade to stick him on. Everybody's a threat. Everybody's a problem in their own way.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I think that's the play for the Spurs. I think you try to attack him, but it's like, I don't know. I'm just willing to like I haven't been right about the Knicks all year long, so I'm not going to try to beat this drum and act like it hasn't got them yet. So I just kind of hesitate to be like, "Oh yeah, it's going to get them here."
But you see what I'm saying. You see how the matchup is different. You see how there were places to hide Brunson in every other series that is different than this one.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's the point that I'm making. I'm not saying that Brunson is going to slip on a banana peel every possession defensively and fall flat on his face. I just think it's going to be more of a problem in this
I mean, he's a
series than it
bad
has been.
defender. Yeah, I mean, if I'm the Spurs, I'm trying to attack him and Cat and involve them as many actions as possible throughout the series. I think that's the right decision to make.
Yeah. I think overall, it's just going to be really difficult for this Knicks defense to deal with Wemby. And then I think you compound that with this team that just puts a lot of pressure on the paint and has two elite corner shooters in pretty much every lineup. So this Spurs offense hasn't been perfect, but they were the number one offense down the stretch of the regular season, and they've been a top three offense in the playoffs, and they did enough against OKC. And that's an all-time great defense. Like, their life is about to get way easier in this matchup. So I think both of these offenses are probably going to do pretty well. I think the Knicks are certainly drawing the much tougher defense, but I also think they have some good answers. I think that the Spurs can definitely exploit the Knicks' defensive weak points. Some other keys that stand out in this series: the non-Wemby minutes, always. The Spurs are plus 188 with Wemby on in these playoffs. They are -3 without him. How much can they survive with him off the floor is a big question. But I have to say, I think it's a very different dynamic in this series than it was against OKC, because OKC, such a great team, and Wemby was so singularly game-changing defensively that, like, the second he went off the floor, it was like the floodgates opened. That wasn't the case in the regular season. That wasn't the case in the first two rounds of the playoffs. Like, the Spurs won the non-Wemby minutes overall this year by a decent margin. OKC just specifically was able to really take advantage of every time he was off the floor. I think they're probably still going to lose the non-Wemby minutes, but by a much more reasonable margin. And they've dominated the Wemby minutes in every matchup so far in this entire season.
I think my biggest concern in the non-Wemby minutes is just them finishing possessions.
Luke Cornett, baby. That's what you got him out there for. Luke
Not against
versus
Big
Mitch is
Mitch.
going to be fun.
Big Mitch is going to shit on Cornette.
Okay. Hey, why the
I mean,
animosity?
dude.
He's been blessed by the fine nuns of San Antonio.
Yeah, I still
Oh,
think.
blocked by Cornett. He just had an all-time highlight last game. He's him.
Man, Big Mitch is strong as an ox.
Yeah, and Luke Cornett is one of the best permanent rebounders and rim protectors of basketball.
And Mitch is
Why you
better.
hating? We'll see.
I
We'll
just
see.
think in
I
that
don't know.
head-to-head matchup, I think Mitch is
Cornett
going to
can
get
make a free throw. That's going to be kind of fun, honestly, the battle of the backup bigs, because I do think they're the two best backup centers in
I agree.
basketball. That'll be cool to see. Lineup versatility. Who do you think has the edge there?
Ugh.
Depth, lineup versatility.
Knicks, just because the Spurs have like 5 unplayable players. I don't know if it's 5, but like they've got Biyombo, Olynyk, Plumlee, and McLaughlin, which is
They're
just
using a
laughable.
lot of roster spots on
And
locker room
Barnes.
guys.
And Barnes. I mean, come on, man.
Okay,
Barnes
well,
is
chill on
playable.
him, bro. Yeah,
But
he's playable. He started in this matchup in the regular season. I think that is advantage Knicks. I mean, I think the Spurs can play 8 guys who they feel good about. Keldon Johnson, he locked in at the end of that series. We'll see
he
what he
did.
can do in this series, but his power element offensively is pretty unique. Like, the Knicks do play a lot of smaller guard wing type slider guard wings. If it is Hart and McKell in the starting lineup, obviously Brunson being out there. If it is Shamet, Deuce McBride coming off the bench, like, maybe Keldon Johnson can play a little more bully ball in this series. Dylan Harper is the GOAT coming off the bench. Cornette is a good backup center. Other than that, it's like Carter Bryant minutes, maybe. You really don't know how those are going to go. That's kind of a roulette wheel. Whereas I do look at the Knicks and I'm like, the different looks that they can throw at you, Deuce and Shamet really move me. I just like that ability to go to like such an elite offensive look. And those guys are also good point of attack defenders. Mitch minutes, as we talked about, could be big in this series. Clarkson's giving you good minutes. I think that's advantage Knicks. I think overall, Mike Brown probably has more to play with just in terms of how he can switch things up in terms of personnel throughout this series. But I think the Spurs have the better starting 5. I really love that lineup. I really believe in Champagny and Vassell to do their job. And if I had to pick a role player hero in this series, Vassell would probably be my pick. I just think he can catch fire as a shooter, and he makes energy plays. And if you run him off the line, he can knock him down from the mid-range. He's just a baller. I guess if Dylan Harper counts as a role player, maybe he would be my pick for role player hero. But Champagny's on that short list too. I really do like those two Spurs wings starters. Transition battle you mentioned went the Knicks' way in the regular season. I still think that's advantage Spurs. I mean, the Knicks have been really good in transition in the playoffs. The Spurs have been the best team in the transition margin this entire year. They were the best in the regular season. They were the best in the playoffs. They're a ridiculous transition offense with the guards that they have and their ability to push pace, and they're a really good transition defense. So I don't think that they're going to necessarily like wallop the Knicks in that category, but the Knicks getting the freebies they were getting off makes against the Cavs, like that's not going to happen. And their floor balance is going to have to be really good because the Spurs are going to play fast, both to get transition scoring opportunities and also potentially to force a cross match where now you have Cat on somebody he doesn't want to be on. You have Brunson on somebody he doesn't want to be on. So that's advantage Spurs to me.
I don't know if I agree.
Mm,
I just think the Knicks have
interesting.
looked so good this season in that department, and like they won
But the
this,
Spurs have been the best team in basketball in that department all year.
and yet
How much better than that can you be?
The Knicks won
0.
that battle so convincingly in the
I know, but
regular
it's 3
season.
games.
I mean, I do think that in general, and I mean, it's bolstered by like a shitty 22 turnover. I mean, the Knicks had 19 turnovers in that game too, so it was just kind of a stink fest. But I do think who can turn the other team over, who can protect the basketball more. Again, I come back to the possession battle. I really think
Mhm.
that's going to be crucial in this one across the board. Offensive rebounds, turnovers, points off turnovers, fast break points. I think that's going to be a huge determinant in who comes out on top. But I think that's advantage Knicks.
Wow. Wow, okay, we'll disagree on that. I will say turnovers, that's gonna be something to track for Castle, who can be a turnover werewolf, and also for Wemby. The one thing that Wemby did struggle with offensively in this matchup was
5 a
turnovers at
game.
times. So he's gonna have to cut down on that. Coaching edge, Logan, who do you give that to?
Mm. I think Mike Brown.
Wow.
Mitch
Logan is predicting a Knicks sweep.
Mitch fires me up, but Mike has
Mitch is
just
a
had all
great
the
coach, dude.
answers.
The Knicks have faced a much easier path to this point. I think Mike Brown is a fantastic coach. I think he has probably added more value just with like the fundamental offensive changes he's made to New York than any other coach. Also, though, Mitch is a great coach and he was fantastic against the Thunder and he was just like battle tested in the ultimate adjustment fucking Armageddon, like just 7 games of, okay, we have to figure this out. We have to figure that out. And he did a really good job. I'm going to be a coward. I'm going to say this is a draw. I think these are 2 elite coaches.
I think they are, yeah.
But I do think that Mike Brown probably has a couple more pieces to play with, as I said earlier. I do think the Spurs are the better team, like just to say that outright. I mean, they were 50-14 when Wemby played this year. They just beat OKC. Like they've been a dominant basketball team. But also, it's all about matchups, and there is a lot to like in this matchup for the Knicks, especially when you look at their offense. And also, the Knicks are just way better than I expected coming into the playoffs. Like they have reached a different level. The offense is special, and so the Spurs have certainly had the better season up to this point, but the Knicks really are rolling right now. Both these teams are in very fine form. Is there any other key you want to get on, Logan, before you make your official prediction? I don't know where you're going to go, man. I thought I did coming into today, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'm set.
All right. What's your prediction?
I'm gonna take the Knicks in 7.
Wow.
Thought
In
about
San Antonio. Wow.
I thought about going Spurs in 7 just because I didn't wanna put the kiss of death on the Knicks, and I'm gonna feel horribly if they lose now that I've switched to the Knicks. They're playing elite basketball. They're riding an 11-game winning streak. They've had the best offense in these playoffs thus far. They're way more rested than the Spurs, and, there's something about the Spurs' youth, and maybe this shouldn't scare me. There's something about relying on them offensively in big moments where Cat and Brunson and OG and McCow and all, and I don't want to downplay like the Spurs supporting cast haven't been playing good basketball, but those guys are at such a high level right now. The offense is in just such an easy rhythm. And maybe you're right. Maybe Mitchell pulls some strings and makes some adjustments that flip this series on its head. The Knicks have just been in such a good rhythm offensively, and I just trust their offense more in totality than the Spurs, and I think that's what I'm going to lean on for this matchup. And I think this is kind of a difficult matchup for Wemby. So coming into this episode, um, before I started doing prep, I thought I was going to go Spurs in 7. I'm going to go Knicks in 7.
I can't believe you would doubt our future GOAT, man. I can't believe
I
you would
think
doubt it.
Spurs and 6 is the easy call, but I'm gonna ride with the Knicks.
But you, being the hero that you are, subverting expectations, are taking the Knicks. I'm gonna go
Something ab
Spurs in 7.
I just can't shake them, man. I don't know what it is about this Knicks team. I've been so wrong about them throughout this year. I've been moved, and like I said, I hope I don't put the kiss of death on them, man, but I do like them in this matchup.
I've been moved to pick them to lose in 7. Coming into the playoffs, a very wrong Carson Breber would have said the Knicks cannot win the title. And even a few weeks ago, I would have said, all right, they'll get out of the East, but they're going to be a significant underdog. They don't feel like a significant underdog to me, but they do still feel like an underdog. I do think the Knicks offense can actually score against the Spurs defense in a way that nobody else can. And they have some unique counters for Wemby's godlike defensive impact, but he's still Wemby. And I just have supreme faith in him dominating this series. And I expect him to be by far the best player on the floor. I think this is his best offensive series that we've seen. I honestly think he just takes over, and especially in the big moments, just asserts himself as the best player on the planet, as he's already done throughout this run. But like, that's a real gap for me. I do not think the Knicks have an answer for his offense, and I still think there are holes in this defense that the Spurs and Wemby can exploit. And I do believe in their guards, especially Castle and Harper, imposing themselves athletically. I believe in the shooting they're getting from the wings. I believe in the bench contributions from Harper, and I feel better about this matchup for Keldon Johnson. And like, ultimately, they're just such an athletic and physically imposing team. And as much credit as I've given to the Knicks offense for what they've done, I mean, you could not jump more degrees of difficulty in terms of what you're facing athletically and defensively than going from what they just saw in the East to what they're about to see with this team. Because it's not just Wemby, it's everybody. The switchability, the perimeter athleticism, the connectedness, the execution, the coaching. Like, this is an elite two-way basketball team in San Antonio. And I think they've been the better, more dominant two-way team throughout this season. I think they reached the higher two-way level in this series. And although I think it's very close, I think the Knicks are going to have some really good offensive games. I just trust the Spurs more. I think they're the better basketball team, and I think that they will overcome some matchup challenges because of that. So I am riding with Wemby. I think this is Wemby's moment. Wemby has had a number of moments throughout this run already, but I think this is the one where we're like, yeah, he just did something that literally nobody has ever done before. I mean, if he wins the title, that's what it is, right? You can talk about 22-year-old LeBron getting the Cavs to the finals in 07, but they got destroyed and they got through a really weak East. And I've talked a lot about Kareem, who had just turned 24 when the Bucks won the title in 71. And that was an all-time great team. And he was clearly the best player on the world, but he was older than Wemby is. People talk about Duncan at 22 years old. He wasn't the best player in the world yet. And that team didn't go through a path like what Wemby just had to go through knocking off the Thunder. So we literally have never seen anything like it. And as somebody who has said things like Wemby has the ability to redefine what a basketball player can do and like cause us to change our conception of the levels of dominance and excellence that are possible, this feels like the first really pivotal moment in that journey where he just cements himself even further. Like, I think that's what's coming. You can talk about the historic stakes on both sides here, what the Knicks can accomplish, what they haven't done as a franchise in so long and all of that. But there's only one Wemby, and I just don't think he'll be denied at this point. I don't think the Knicks are the team that's going to deny him. So there you have it, folks. I'm really, really excited. I am. I'm juiced. Are you juiced, man? I know I
I'm
asked you that
pumped.
to start this episode, but
Yeah,
you
I
didn't
mean,
really give me the answer I wanted. You were kind of like, whatever. You were kind of like Celtics, Mavs. That got me just as riled up as this is. Like, no, man. This should have you bricked up. This should have you totally torqued, turgid, ready to go.
I just like basketball. I mean, I'd be excited about any series.
Well, yeah, me too, man. But there are degrees of excitement. This is awesome.
I'm excited to see Jalen Brunson in the NBA Finals, man.
It's going to be such a moment in MSG, but it's also going to be such a moment in San Antonio. Those are great fans. The atmosphere, man. I'm telling you, that stuff elevates it. It does. Last year was a great finals atmosphere too. And last year was a great final series. If this series is as good as last year's, we all win. and I think it just might be. I will say I was closer to Spurs in 6 than I was picking the Knicks to win. I couldn't pick the Knicks to win this series, not against Wemby. He's Wemby. So we will see you all after game 1. But before we go, let's talk real quick about this AJ Brown trade, Logan. He is officially a Patriot. This has been rumored for quite some time, but he is sent out for a first-round pick and a fifth-round pick from Philly. What's your reaction to this move?
I love it for New England. I think they needed a legitimate number one wide receiver. I think that was their biggest need this offseason outside of offensive line play. They already got Elijah Vera Tucker. I thought that was a home run. And then to get A.J. Brown with Diggs' free agency, and I mean, Diggs was good for this team, but he wasn't the kind of difference maker that they needed. A.J. Brown definitely is, and they pair him up with a superstar quarterback in Drake May. I mean, you think about the struggles that the Eagles have had getting the most out of A.J. Brown, right? Like, Brown has had, and I want to give him credit for the production and the circumstances. He's had 4 straight 1,000-yard campaigns with fluctuating QB play from Hurts, with all these offensive coordinator changes. Like, the fact that he's been able to produce that in such a run-heavy offense with that much variable change and turnover is impressive. I think he's going to flourish with Drake May. Like, May was getting the most out of, I don't know if I can say one of the worst receiving cores in the NFL, but it was certainly certainly below league average, I would say, in totality with all of their weapons, in quotations. They've gone up a notch, so I love this for New England. Like, the way I look at it, if the Pats were going to spend a first-round pick on getting a wide receiver anyway, why not just use that to get a sure thing? You know what you're getting with A.J. Brown. He's one of the best man coverage, one-on-one wideouts in football. You're pairing him up with a guy that can get him to rock easy. I love it for New England. For Philly, kind of a tough sell. I'm not going to lie. Like, I think they got decent value back for a guy like A.J. Brown, but you like it for Philly.
Well, I just think they had to trade him. I think he was gonna fucking throw himself off a cliff otherwise.
Yeah, I get that.
He's beyond disgruntled, and you get a first, like, it's good return, and a fifth. I think they did as well as they could have. The situation was fucked. They have some stuff to figure out, but I don't know. We might have been on the verge of things getting really bad in that locker room. AJ Brown is not above causing a little bit of chaos. He's got that classic receiver temperament, but also, like, his frustrations are super justified. It's insane how bad they've been at getting him the football for the level of talent that he is. So I think it's going to be awesome to see him in New England. I think having a legit number one like that is going to unlock another level for this Pats offense that was really elite in the regular season, but did struggle more in the playoffs. And I think the absence of that, like, go-to guy was felt. That and the offensive line not quite being as good as it needed to be. But I think it's awesome whenever you see an elite young quarterback paired with that, like, legit number one receiver. It's going to be a show. It's going to be a show. And you're talking about the best deep ball thrower in football against a vertical threat like AJ Brown. It's going to be sweet. As a Bills fan, I'm jealous. We got DJ Moore, though. We're good. But I'm just like, man, respect to these teams who are like, oh, yeah, we're really good, but we have a need. Let's go out there and let's get a fucking stud, and we don't care what it takes. That's what the Rams did. That's what the Pats did. And I think there was a lot of speculation that they were going to be due for, like, a major Super Bowl hangover, right? Just because schedule was so easy last year. It gets a lot harder this year. It was a wonky playoff run, all of these things. Not the most talented team necessarily on paper, but I think this is a nice little shot in the arm for them. And I like it a lot. I think it's probably a win-win considering what the circumstances were in Philly.
Yeah, it's just, I agree with you on that. And I think asset-wise, I think they got the most that they could. That being said, just like when I look at their prospects for next year, like, if Mekhi Lemon hits, this is a home run. Just like, just individually for this next season, it's kind of hard for me to envision that this offense is going to be better with a rookie wideout. And I think Smitty can step up and be the number one. That's not really my concern. I think Smitty rocks. Like, that's not the issue. It's just me imagining this offense getting better without A.J. Brown slotting in a rookie wideout.
No, I don't think that's going to happen, but at least they don't have Kevin Patullo calling plays anymore.
That's a great point.
And I really do think their hands were more or less tied. I mean, it's why they picked Mekhi Lemon. Like, this has been a foregone conclusion, I think, throughout this offseason that A.J. Brown was not going to be an Eagle, and he was probably going to be a New England Patriot because he wants so desperately to be reunited with Mike Vrabel because he just admires him so dang much. That's just his role model. That's his guy. There has been a lot of reporting, like, really emphasizing the A.J. Brown Vrabel stuff, and I'm like, all right, A.J., you freak. Cool. Great podcast, man. We'll see you guys on Wednesday when we will have some NBA Finals basketball to talk about. But actually, if you want to see us even before then, we got daily stuff on social that you can find across all platforms. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber,
I've been Logan Camden.
and this was Nerd Sesh.